When does week start?
It'll probably be January.
You about ready?
Monday the 30th, so it'll be the 29th.
See, I don't get the whole month. I just get a week.
I only got a week when I did it too. So February 1st?
No, I think it'll start Sunday. It's kind of one.
It usually starts on Wednesday though.
Oh, then I guess it starts Sunday.
It usually starts on a Wednesday. I don't know why.
But yeah, it has to start Sunday.
And the Super Bowl usually during.
That's what I mean.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
You can't start.
Probably not going to get more.
So it end March 1st. You're here. Why did I think you weren't here? Do I have your permission to delete things downstairs?
Yeah,
Andy's always here.
I'm always
I
here.
only say that because Andy always says Ben's always here.
Yeah.
Oh,
I'm
okay.
here past Ben, if that's any indication on how often I'm here.
Oh, they changed this.
All right, so if you're okay with just from those hits.
Right,
that's all
I did delete a lot
Oh,
of
did you?
stuff. I think I did.
Well, Allie had a bunch of problems this morning.
Well, that was with the Mac though, right?
No, well, she had a bunch of problems with
With both.
first WSI, then it was,
Kelly just had problems.
poor Allie was sick. Poor Allie. It was, none of it was her fault. She was just the receiver.
Yeah, we can look at it. You ready, Tyler?
And it could have been the CCR show she was open.
Okay. I haven't looked at TCR.
That's probably
so-
what it
okay.
was. Yeah, she was doing the CCR show.
Well, we're probably not going to get too much more attendance than this since most people are at AMS. So, without further ado, we have Tyler Royce here, who's going to talk about European winter and our winter here to see what's going on.
Hey, thanks for coming, not being in Seattle, Tyler.
Yeah. Who wants to go to Seattle? So we'll first off with radar and what it's been doing for the last several hours since 7 o'clock this morning, and watching a lovely nor'easter and bringing sleet and snow. How many of you actually thought it would produce this much sleet/snow here? Any hands? Well, there's been about the same from at work too. I think my coworker and I were probably the only ones who were pushing the bandwagon that we would actually get something. So it's actually a small victory in the many victories that we don't see throughout the year. And as Steve Seaman tweeted out, this is the third largest snowfall that we've had this year. And as my same coworker who brought up the fact that it was on the bandwagon for snow, he said if we didn't see much, or if we saw less than an inch, we would be below last year's rate as of today. So think about that. We had that blizzard last year over the last couple of days that gave us the 5 inches, and then we kind of had a very slow snowfall rate. Well, if we didn't see anything the last couple of days, we would have been below that, which is very sad to think about. Very sad. So if you're looking for a model that actually had a victory, you can call the NAM victory on that one, especially yesterday when it was starting to show all sleet for a good portion of the, at least the first half of the storm. So now it's just going to be slowly taking its time moving to the northeast off the New England coastline. And then as we go into the, let's see. If we take a look then at the satellite, we can essentially see what we're essentially going to have is this nice mini bridge pushed through. Even though it says today it's supposed to get up into the 40s, I'm going to doubt that it's really going to get up into the mid 40s with wraparound still hanging around the area. But we're going to have a storm system come in for Thursday, or a front at least, that we'll briefly track, that will negate any dry weather that we had, or that we're going to have for tomorrow. Why don't we just take a look at that then? So we have our nor'easter. I will say that they did produce some gusty winds. I believe, or was it Groton, Connecticut this morning was gusting over 53 knots. around 3, 4 a.m. I do believe, if I remember correctly, the time I was able to look at Twitter while at work, that there's a lot of tree damage all the way up into northwest Connecticut, where besides getting just sleet, they actually had trees coming down there as well. It wasn't just confined to eastern Mass, southern Connecticut, Long Island, where the highest winds were supposed to be. To go along with that, the snow amounts, or I should say the sleet amounts, have been very impressive from Sussex County in New Jersey all the way up the Hudson Valley, where a lot of places have been seeing 2 to 3 inches of sleet, just pure sleet. Mixing itself went all the way up into Montreal. It took forever in Syracuse to get into the snow. They just were dealing with sleet and freezing rain throughout the whole time. So this overall was just a very nasty, messy storm. So when you take a look at snowfall totals, which I just found out the Boston NWS office changed their Google map back onto this. I don't know if it's cleaner, but from what the latest storm reports are, you see a lot of messiness with the totals being reported. Probably it's mainly because there was a ton of mixing going on. So it wasn't just us who had sleet storm, it was essentially everyone who had to deal with sleet. Do know for a fact that southeast Massachusetts was just getting pummeled by rain, at least 1 to 2 inches. And oddly enough, when I was checking obs over in Martha's Vineyard and Nantucket, the winds weren't that bad yet. So river northeastern, as we go forward, that goes off into Nova Scotia. We briefly have a mini ridge of high pressure, which will allow essentially our snow to disappear. So enjoy it while we have it. Then we have this nice trough that's going to be just essentially digging and moving into the east. And here's our cold front that we're going to be seeing that's going to kind of march through here on Wednesday night into Friday. March forward. When I looked at this yesterday, or Sunday night yesterday, the front didn't look as juicy as it does now. Kind of looked like, oh, maybe a few rain or snow showers will be associated with it as it moves through. And now it actually looks like there's some juice to it, some oomph to it. So when the warmest weather is going to occur is probably somewhere between, in my opinion, it's going to be temperatures rising throughout Wednesday out ahead of the front. And it's probably going to be some overnight high before the front comes crashing through and temperatures are going to drop throughout the day. Might take a while for actually the true cold air associated with this to move in, so we might slightly rebound in the afternoon. But what this will essentially do is kick up the lake effect machine as we go forward for the weekend. So winter once again returns after a couple of week reprieve of dealing with some I'm going to call British weather, because that's what I feel like, even though we're not there. And I'll get to that point in a few seconds. So that is what I have for the local. Any questions? All righty. So I think I got out of we'll go back into my email, because there's some actual graphics. One place that is still seeing winter for the first time since at least 5 years is Europe. First of all, I need to put the right password. It essentially feels like January 1st hit and all hell has broken loose across Europe. And what we're taking a look here is the weeklies that the CPC has comes out with once the week is completed, and tells us how much precipitation is it, how much below or above normal is it, the temperature anomalies. And these are the temperature anomalies starting the first of the year. And much of Europe here is below average, which, okay, so maybe in the last few years you'll see a glancing blow of a brief cold snap, and then they warm back up, and for the month it ends up average to slightly still above average. Well, not in this case. So in this case, first week were essentially cold. Snow returns to many places across Central and Eastern Europe. Lake effect snow moves into, I believe if I go to the next week, lake effect snow moves into Athens. So Athens, once you got out of just near the sea level, if you just got slightly high in the city, you actually saw a couple of inches of snow there. I believe in the northern coastal areas of Greece, they actually did get to see several inches of snow. So this is now, we gotta go backwards. The middle of the week, middle of January, in where the cold essentially is in Italy and into Eastern Europe, and then finally we go into last week, and where it's just been mainly across Western and Central Europe. From France over to Poland, this is its first to see this kind of winter. Has been since if I remember correctly, it's either 2011, 2012, or 2010, 2011. So it's been at least 5 years that they've seen winter there, where they've been cold, where they've seen snow, which caused issues. For the Balkans downwards, Bosnia over to Romania, down to Greece, it's been at least 12 years. That's we have to go back to 2005, 2006. When both Central into Eastern and then down into the Balkans have seen cold at the same time, I actually have to go dig more and find out when that actually is. When that is, I want to say it's probably 05, 06. So it's been a very long time since much of Europe has dealt with a winter where there's snow lovers, and trust me, there are snow lovers over there in Europe. I hear it all the time on Twitter, where they've been dealing with a lot of this cold. Yes?
How hard is it to access these maps?
These maps come out, I will show you, they're very easy. It's hidden within the lovely government CPC site. Just like every other good find, it's always hidden there. These maps are very easy to find to use, and I believe they have one for the United States, for Africa, for Asia, and for South America. So with all this cold, there's also been a lot of fog, and it's also been, as I say, there's been a lot of snow, but it's also been dry. There's actually drought conditions starting to develop across England, Wales, into France, into Western Germany, because it's been typically at slightly below average temperature-wise since October, which has also been very dry there, because the pattern has set up to where the AO and the NAO have not been really with the same sign. So it might be positive AO and then it's negative NAO. It has essentially allowed high pressure systems to settle in and over much of the heartland of Europe. When we have that happen, fog essentially develops from England, central southern England, northern central France, all the way over into the Czech Republic and Germany. So they will have days with these dense fog that doesn't lift until noon, or in some cases, depending on where they're located, it doesn't lift at all. And so right now, there's when I go to the models, I'll show you that we have a situation going on like that right now. So when you throw that in, throw in the cold, so you get freezing fog, they'll also get a lot of hoarfrost, which is, it looks like it snowed when it is exactly just frost developing on itself. We've had an episode of that, I want to say, within the last couple of years.
It was December of 2015.
Yes. But there, when they get it, it looks like they have seen inches of snow. I was looking at traffic cameras in the Netherlands last week, and it looked like that they had snow on the ground just because everything was essentially covered with hoarfrost. So it is a tricky situation, because how do you really forecast that? without having to put in snow, saying it's going to accumulate, or say put in for ice. In reality, you just have to tell them watch for icy spots, essentially. So to go along with that, there's been two big weather systems. Actually, I'll go three big weather systems. Except for Portugal and Ireland, every country in Europe has seen snow. That includes Paris, that includes London, and oddly enough, both time when London saw their snow, it had to be during the evening rush. So whenever a big city gets it, it seems to always be in the evening, during the evening rush. And just like here, traffic got snow. Just even to the south and east of England, they saw a lot. Traffic got snowed for hours. I want to say 3-4 hours where they were trying to go up a hill, and it was a bad struggle. How many of you heard about the earthquake in Italy last Wednesday and the avalanche that occurred afterwards? Essentially, Central Italy has just gotten, Mother Nature must really hate Central Italy. Because, if I remember correctly from what I saw on reliable source on Twitter, the mountains of Italy, so the Anomalies in Central Italy, have seen their worst snowfall in 50 years. This month alone. They first started with a storm system that tracked from the storm track was essentially across Sicily into Greece, which brought snow to northern Greece, the Romania, Bulgaria, and the southern Balkans. But what it does is when you have a storm system tracking that way, you have northeasterly winds, just like we have a nor'easter. It fires up what they call bore winds, because you have mountains across the western Balkans called the Dinaric Alps. So you have fire up the winds, they come howling across, and we're talking about 70 to 100 mile per hour wind gusts with these. They come screaming northeasterly across the Adriatic Sea into eastern Italy and up the eastern slopes of the Apennines, and you're actually going to get sea effect in this case. Well, some places actually where the earthquake was, which was essentially here where the cursor is, they got dumped there. They got at least, some places saw 1 to 2, 3 feet of snow. So we fast forward to last week. With high pressure controlling much of Central Europe, the heartland of Europe, we had low pressure down north of Sicily. And what that did is they had a nice funnel of precipitation right up into where my cursor is. There's a coastal town that is kind of directly east on the eastern coast of Italy, direct from Rome, that saw 10 inches of rain. When you see that, your eyes pop out and you say, okay, is it the measurements that are going bonkers, or is it really true? And the models for days on end suggested that when the locations where my cursor were going to get pounded by precipitation. And then where that earthquake happened, it was supposed to see up to at least 3 feet of snow. It just happened when that earthquake happened, the heavy snow was it was the last day of the heavy snow, which resulted then in the avalanche happening 24 hours and everyone going and freaking out. And I believe last I heard, for an event by Mother Nature, there's a prosecutor, I think it's the country, some prosecutor is looking into manslaughter charges into the earthquake. And then what happens today is that they're continuing to do their search. They're running out because with so much snow, they can't get all the equipment in, that there's a helicopter crash in the same area, and there were no survivors. So, on a positive note, I will go to the weather charts, and finally, just like here, we have seen some interesting weather. In Europe, it's finally going to get interesting later, going into next month at the end of this month into next month. So essentially, we have high pressure centered over Germany, and it's not these week-eating high pressures. It's been 1030, 1036, 1040. So slowly high pressure negates to the east. We're going to have a cold front essentially just be lined up, wanting to come in, but it's going to be blocked. And as we continue to move eastward, going through the time period, cold front will be able to move into Spain, into Portugal, and they have been in a long drought. They've been in a very bad drought, just like California. This one has actually been very good for them. Southeast coastal Spain has been, even got to see some snow last week. It was the first time in 35 years that they would get to see some snow. But what we're going to see is, as we go into the weekend, main low pressure is going to be stalled just south of Iceland, has been the case for much of winter. And then you're going to see these waves just come right up and graze western of the British Isles. So this is weekend, so it's the 29th. We have one wave start to come in. We have high pressure still dominating much of Europe. Another cold snap of seeing low temperatures down to almost 0 degrees in the typical colder locations of the Balkans into Ukraine and Belarus, which, a side story, is all those who have no homes in the Balkans will continue have to deal with trying to stay warm. But what we're dealing with as we go into the end of January is there's the increasing potential for damaging winds, for what we consider a windstorm, something that will bring wind gusts over 50 miles per hour and bring damage to parts of Europe. It's been a very quiet season. It's been a very humbling season for me for that. The last time that there were any damaging storms like that was actually around Christmas for the British Isles into northern Germany, where the UK Met named 2 of them, Barbara and Connor. That brought some damaging winds, but as we go into the end of January, we're finally going to start to see some storminess, and every single run that I've checked, the models have, of course, changed the idea of what's going to happen as we end January, go into February. And so essentially, British Isles into northwestern France have to be on the lookout as we go into February, which is right here, for the chance that there's going to be a storm system that's going to be riding along the front, and it's going to rapidly develop, and is going to produce up to hurricane force winds. And so this is the solution for the February, for Groundhog's Day. It looks like it wants to bring damaging winds all the way up into London, just west of Paris, and include northwestern Spain in that. On the site, we have the wonderful option of checking out the Euro ensembles, or the mean ensemble. Granted, this is the 0Z, but let me get what I want. That's right. So essentially what the ensemble, or the mean and European ensemble, is essentially going to show us is we're going to have this broad area of low pressure kind of stay south of Iceland for much of the rest of the week. And as we go into the end, into the weekend, that moves out and a new one moves in, but it's still continuing to show, just like what the GFS was showing, some kind of storminess into the British Isles, into Western Europe, with the constant troughiness across there. And if you go to the second, it does show the potential that a low pressure system will be deepening off the coast of Ireland. If you're looking for a definition of what a windstorm is any area of low pressure that's around 980 millibars and lower and will produce winds at least 50 miles per hour. Once you get up into hurricane force gusts, then you can get into significant and extreme, and it can do a lot of damage. And that's what they actually care about. They really don't care about the snow and the cold because they don't get it as often as here, but the winds do a whole lot of damage where it can knock out power for days on end, destroying numerous trees. There is a storm back in the 90s. I'm going to forget its name or when it occurred, but the storm track was through the English Channel, but it brought its damaging winds to Paris. And we all know Versailles, or we know the Palace of Versailles, where the Treaty of Versailles was. There's actually a show on that, Louis the 16th. I believe it's 16th. Nevertheless, in the 90s, there was a windstorm that came through that just wiped out thousands of trees within hours because of how strong the winds are. So they care about the wind more than they care about the snow. Along with these systems like to bring coastal flooding, especially at high tides, because you get the waves to get crashing, and you get erosion, you get from that, and then also you're going to have an area of heavy rain that's going to lead to some kind of flooding. So whenever you see the evening news, you always see pictures of the seas crashing upon a seawall in the British Isles somewhere. It's probably because we have a windstorm that's causing that. So next week, expect to see at some point that to occur. Any questions? Well, thank you guys for having me.
Thank you, Tyler. We don't have anyone signed up yet for next week, so if you're able to do it or you know anyone, any grad students or anything that would like to do it, send me an email. I'm going to send out another email tonight bugging you guys to volunteer. So, thank you again, Tyler.
You're welcome.